On this edition of Practical Probate, I'm going to talk about Connecticut real property and probate. I'm Dom Calabrese. Since 1995, I've been a Connecticut attorney, and since 2003, I've been a Connecticut probate judge. I developed Practical Probate as a series of presentations and articles that are designed to provide information so that you'll be less likely to be taken advantage of by unscrupulous purveyors of questionable estate planning and probate products. This presentation is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be, and it shouldn't be relied upon as legal advice. For legal advice, you need to consult with a qualified attorney. Today I'm going to talk about Connecticut real property and probate. I'm going to talk about a specific aspect of it, an aspect that most people don't know about, and an aspect that, as a judge for 17 years, I've seen a number of people get caught up in. When someone owns real property in Connecticut, any interest in real property, not just solely owned, if it's in survivorship, if it's in irrevocable trust, they have to go to the probate court when the person who had that ownership interest passes away. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is in Connecticut, when a person passes away having any interest in Connecticut real property, there is an unrecorded lien on the property records for unpaid Connecticut probate fees and unpaid Connecticut estate taxes. Now what does that mean? What do all those words mean? Well, the reality is it's an unrecorded lien. An unrecorded lien means if you go look for it in the land records, it's not going to be there. The only way to get it released is to have the probate court issue a release of lien. The only way to get the probate court to issue the release of lien is to go through the proper procedure in the probate court. So while most people realize one of the main functions of our probate court when someone passes away is to determine the legal owner of property that the deceased person owned, another purpose of probate in Connecticut is to ensure that Connecticut estate taxes and probate fees are paid. And even if that real estate is not solely owned, even if it passes outside the probate process, as it would in survivorship or if it were in a trust, there still needs to be a Connecticut estate tax return filed in the local probate court if there's no Connecticut estate tax due, or with the Connecticut Department of Revenue Services if it is taxable under Connecticut's estate tax laws. At that point, the probate fee will be assessed. If any estate taxes are due, they will be paid. And only after that is a release of lien issued by the probate court. So let me give you an example or two of situations where this becomes a significant issue. So let's look at husband and wife, a married couple in Connecticut. They own their house in survivorship. All their assets are in survivorship. When the husband passes away, he's the first to pass away, the widow thinks, well, everything was in survivorship, so now all the assets that we own together, when her husband was alive, now the widow owns them. The probate court has no say over that. That's automatic by operation of law. But the mistake most people in that situation make is because the probate court has no jurisdiction over the real estate, they also think there's no need to go to the probate court. And many people in that situation don't go to the probate court. So what happens? Well, a typical situation is a few years after the husband passes away, the widow says, I want to move to a more suitable place. The house is too big or the house is too old. I need to find a more suitable place to live. So she decides to sell the house. She puts the house up for sale. shortly thereafter, someone goes into contract to purchase the house from the widow. Now, typically in residential real estate transactions, a title search, that's a search of the land records by the prospective buyer, is not going to take place until about a week or so before the closing date. A title search is conducted. The results of the title search say there's no release of Connecticut estate tax or probate fee lien. This transaction cannot be completed. So there's a call made to the seller, the widow's attorney, saying we can't go through with the sale until there's a release of lien. And then there's a panic. We get calls in the probate court, and the call goes something like, I can't sell my house next week, we're all set to go, I never went to the probate court, now we have to do filings in the probate court. And of course, in the probate court, where I'm the judge, and I think in most Connecticut probate courts, we try very hard to accommodate those last minute requests, but more times than I'd like to see, it's not possible to accommodate them on the very, very short timelines that are often required. So the reality is that is a wrinkle in our law in Connecticut, but a lot of people get caught up in it. And even if the house was in a trust where maybe the husband was a beneficiary during his lifetime, even in that case, there still needs to be at least a tax purposes only filing in our Connecticut probate courts. So what I want you to understand with real estate in Connecticut is it is complex, there are wrinkles to it, and just because all of the deceased person's assets were arranged before that person passed away so that there were no probate proceedings required to determine the legal owner of those assets, that does not mean that it is unnecessary to go to the probate court. In fact, it is necessary to go to the probate court. In the scenario I described, the probate process is much shorter than if those assets were owned solely in the deceased person's name. It's a much shorter process. It's probably 6 to 8 weeks versus 8 to 12 months. So there's certainly advantages to putting those plans into place, putting an estate plan together and planning for what happens after you pass away. But the reality is when it comes to real property, there's still going to be a need to go to the probate court to get those release of liens issued. Thank you.